In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Welcome, everyone, to Crime and Punishment. This is a legal podcast where we talk about legal news. We give legal commentary. We totally do not talk about politics. So please don't ban us from YouTube. I believe we're also simulcasting to X, formerly known as Twitter. This is the 91st episode of Crime and Punishment. A legal podcast, again, not a political one. The official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida. The website for which is augustusinvictus.com, and that is me, yours truly, the host of this program. This totally legal, apolitical program. I always forget about plugging the email list and the viral style, where we get our delicious t-shirt money. So let me do that right now. This is the website in the chat. You scroll down to the bottom, you can put your email address in, and you get the newsletter that we send out every week, roughly every week, sometimes twice a week if I do it Monday and Thursday, usually just Monday or Thursday, sometimes not at all, and then you gotta wait till the following week. In any event, there's that. I don't have the viral style up. Can't do it. Sorry. I'm not going to go hunting for it right now. But again, if you sign up for the email list, you'll see it. I am going to put in here the link to the kill stream that I was on Tuesday with Ethan Ralph. There it is. It's a 7-hour long stream. I don't know where I showed up at 9:30 at night. Let me see. Maybe I don't know. You're going to have to look for it in there. It's somewhere in there. I was on there for like 45 minutes. Great program. Let's see what else we got. So today we're going to talk about a lot of news. Let's get out of that window. This is called Bergoglio, the Patriot Act, and the TikTok ban. Mostly because those things are trending. And we found that putting trending topics in the thing on X, if it's trending on X, we put the title with those trending terms, like it somehow cracks that code. However, we did name it that for a reason as well, because we're going to be talking about those things. So Bergoglio, of course, is the last name, the actual last name of Pope Francis, the present Pope. Today is the 11th anniversary of his pontificate. And I was commenting with a friend this morning, it's amazing how much damage one guy can do to the church in a mere 11 years. Church that's been around for 2,000 years, and you can do that much damage in such a short period of time. It's incredible. The Patriot Act and the TikTok ban are kind of the same subject. And we'll talk about that later, but basically the TikTok ban is like this Trojan horse, where we're saying, well, we're getting rid of Chinese influence. It's the Chi-Coms. They're surveilling Americans. We got to stop that. But if you look at the history of the Patriot Act, they pulled much the same little ruse, right? We got to have the Patriot Act. Can't have radical Muslim terrorists blowing up our buildings in New York City, and God knows where they're going to strike next. Got to pass the Patriot Act so we can spy on those Muslim terrorists. And of course, everybody says, well, yeah, we don't need another 9/11. Let's give the government the power, the ability to stop that from happening again. And what do you know? Immediately, they turn on white supremacists. They turn on anti-government patriots and libertarians and veterans. Those are the real enemies for which they passed the Patriot Act. And you're going to see they passed this TikTok ban for much the same reason. They're empowering the President of the United States to make the call of what websites to ban, what apps to ban from your phone. How long until Biden uses that to ban RT, or he uses it to ban the Daily Stormer, or he uses it to ban whatever is coming out of another country that they don't like. Ostensibly, yeah. How could you argue with that? If it's somebody listed as a foreign adversary, you don't want their propaganda coming. I mean, what about ISIS? Should we not be able to ban ISIS's propaganda from being spread amongst our youth, especially the Muslim youth here in America? But that's not what they're actually going to use it for, is it? They're going to use it for anybody who's speaking out against Israel. They're going to use it for, well, these foreign adversaries and Hamas and Hezbollah are talking bad about Israel. We need to ban their websites. It's a slippery slope. We have seen it so many times before. You would think people would catch on after a while, but Americans have such a short memory. Speaking of which, somebody sent me, after I was on the kill stream the other night with Ethan Ralph, somebody sent me this stream of Nick Fuentes. I try not to talk about Fuentes. However, I feel like I owe Fuentes an apology. So, all those years ago, I mean, that must have been 6 years ago now, said something that just got under my skin. That Invictus is a pagan, that's what I heard, and these pagans are the problem, and we need to get them out of the right wing or whatever it was. And I took offense to it, went after him, challenged him to a fight, and he responded with, "I'm just a comedian. I don't understand why anybody listens to what I have to say." To which I responded, "Well, then why are you talking at all if you don't mean anything you say?" However, 6 years later, perhaps I was wrong. First of all, I was wrong being a pagan. He was actually correct about that, and that's the most galling thing when someone you hate is right about you. Terrible. Terrible situation to be in. However, also could be I just completely overreacted. And it wasn't actually insult. He wasn't even really talking about me. He was talking about paganism in general. And undeniable that the young man has made a great success. So, mea culpa. Moving on. Trump promises to free January 6 rioters on first day back in White House if reelected. Heartwarming news. ABC News, however, put free in quotation marks. Don't know why. Do they think he doesn't really mean he's going to free them? Does he think that canceling all of their cases, ordering the DOJ to drop all their cases, it isn't really freeing them? He's called them J6 hostages. I think the real thing that should be in quotation marks here is rioters, not the word free. So, former President Donald Trump says one of his first acts, if elected to a second term, would be to, quote, free people convicted for their roles in the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, whom Trump continues to claim are, quote, wrongfully imprisoned, end quote. He made that promise, presumably about using the presidential pardon power, on his social media platform on Monday night. It's the latest example of how he has repeatedly defended those charged and convicted of crimes for their conduct at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Here's another misunderstanding, aside from the one I just talked about earlier. When you saw the events of January 6 unfolding from the outside, not knowing what was going on, it might have looked as though Trump just threw all these people under the bus. Just said, let's go to the Capitol, and then just ditched them there. And then didn't say anything about it and just left them, to hang. And it looked like a betrayal. However, that beautiful woman, Cassidy Hutchinson, I think is her name, testified that actually Trump was hollering at Secret Service, saying, I am the president, you will take me to the Capitol. And they said, no, we are not taking you there, we are turning around and going to the White House. He was actually in a fight with his own Secret Service agents, commanding them to take him to the Capitol, and they drove the other way. So for him to come out now and say, these people are hostages, this is 100% political, I'm going to free them as soon as I get into office, is redeeming, to say the least. Trump didn't specify how many of the rioters he would pardon, though he said last year that, quote, "I am inclined to pardon many of them. I can't say for every single one because a couple of them, probably they got out of control," end quote. So anybody charged with like an actual violent crime, like assaulting the police or something like that, not looking good. But you'd think that people like Enrique Tarrio or Joe Biggs, who were charged with what, conspiracy, Stuart Rhodes, like didn't actually hit or hurt anyone, didn't destroy any property, they're accused of this nonsense, or people that just walked into the building and walked back out, those are presumably the people that will be freed on the first day in office. The Department of Justice announced last week that, to date, nearly 1,400 people have been arrested and charged in connection with January 6th, with nearly 800 of them pleading guilty. 1,400 people. That number was 1,200 just a couple months ago. Well, I guess it wasn't in this article, but they had said that the DOJ was arresting people on basically a daily basis. A daily basis, people are still getting caught up in this dragnet and being dragged into court for this. Of those charged, 127 people are accused of using a deadly or dangerous weapon or causing serious bodily injury to an officer, according to the DOJ. I'm sure those aren't exaggerated at all, but I'm sure that whatever team Trump organizes to investigate this, they're going to find out which of those charges are trumped up. No pun intended. Nearly 500 of the defendants have received prison sentences so far, though most of those sentenced to periods of incarceration will have already been released by January 2025, when Trump would return to the White House if reelected. That's true. So the people being arrested now, who won't be facing trial until January or later, those people will definitely benefit. The people who are imprisoned now and will be serving sentences past January of next year, those people will definitely benefit. The people who are serving their sentences and will be out by Trump's installment, those people, however, will not be felons anymore. They will be redeemed. They will not have a criminal record because they'll be pardoned, presumably. So, yeah, it sucks to go to, trust me, it sucks to go to jail for an extended period of time. But, you know, when you're fighting an evil regime, that's what happens to you. And if you went to the Capitol riot not knowing that, why were you there? You know it's an evil regime. That's why you were there. You know that they turn on their own citizens and imprison them on false charges. That's why you were there. I mean, so it does suck, but, I mean, the media has essentially already called the election for Trump. It's a no-brainer at this point. Absolutely massacred the primary elections like nothing we've ever seen before. Biden's ratings are through the floor. Michelle Obama already said she's not running. Newsom ain't running. So it's just no contest. They'd have to kill the man. They'd have to kill Trump to stop him from taking office now. So it's all but over. It's like the first time he ran. He said, look, I've already won this election. You people just don't understand it yet. Trump has downplayed the violence that ensued that day, that is January 6th, referring to the defendants as J6 hostages, calling for their release and appearing at fundraisers supporting them. Good man. At recent events, right before Trump walks on stage, his campaign has been playing Justice for All by the so-called J6 Prison Choir, a group of men incarcerated for their roles on January 6th, singing the Star-Spangled Banner as Trump recites the Pledge of Allegiance. The DOJ it was this article. The DOJ continues to arrest additional defendants accused of committing violence at the Capitol on a near-daily basis. Among those that have received the highest sentences for their involvement in the January 6th Capitol attack are former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, sentenced to 22 years in prison. Unbelievable. Far-right group Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rhodes sentenced to 18 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. Peter Schwartz of Pennsylvania, who was sentenced to more than 14 years, including on assault and civil disorder. And retired New York City police officer Thomas Webster, who was sentenced to 10 years in prison after assaulting a Washington, D.C. officer that day. The Biden campaign criticized Trump's latest support for January 6th defendants, claiming he's encouraging political violence to hold on to power. Quote, the American people haven't forgotten the violent attack on our Capitol on January 6th. They know Trump is too dangerous to be let anywhere near the Oval Office again, and they'll turn out to protect our democracy and keep Trump out of the White House this November, end quote. Biden campaign spokesperson Serafina Chitika wrote in a statement. Wonder how they'll turn out. At the voting booths? No, they'll mail it in. Or maybe they'll just black out all the windows and hide the vote count. Or maybe they'll get into the machines and change the vote count. Or maybe they'll set cities on fire again. I can't wait for this summer. This fall is going to be a blast. Let's see how it unfolds. In other news, hate to read CNN, but let's check and make sure everybody can hear the audio. Okay, it looks like it can because the chat's on. Spud Ruckus says, haven't watched an Ethan Ralph stream in a long time. I did hear it's gotten better since he got sober. Yeah, good man. Good man. He got sober, lost over 100 pounds. Guy's killing it. I mean, good for him, man. It's always inspiring to see those kind of life changes in somebody. Volksstärke, with all the Chinese spyware in the App Store, why is TikTok the focus? Yeah, that's a good question. Of all the things going on in America, why is TikTok so important? I mean, I think the whole thing should be banned, not just Chinese ownership of TikTok. I think TikTok should just be illegal. Snapchat should be illegal. All this stuff that brain damages kids should be illegal. 100%. It should brain damages adults too. Just ban it. The whole thing is poison. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Just make it illegal. It's doing nothing. Well, except for maybe advertising dollars. It's doing nothing positive. I'll tell you that. Dennis says, hey, Augustus, great podcast, with Cantwell the other night. Thanks for all your assistance with Ram and Runda. Well, I can't say I'm really assisting with Ram and Runda now. I'm kind of out of the loop, but thank you, man. I don't have the link up, but yeah, I was on the Radical Agenda last week and talking about the Charlottesville case, the Ram case, Robert Rundo, and this week was the kill stream. So, Volksstärke, you were both wrong on that situation, talking about me and Fuentes. Yep. However, he was like a 19-year-old kid. I was a full-grown adult, so it's definitely on me. That was my bad. Garfield but racist. Early squad assemble. Yeah, I decided to get this show on the road today. I got a lot of work to do today that I do not want to interrupt in the middle of the afternoon. Like we got to get this done. Spud Ruckus says, barring whatever your opinion someone has of Fuentes, that's pretty mature of you. You don't hear that a lot in these circles. Well, thank you. But yeah, man, that's you got to give Fuentes credit. He's come a long way in maturity himself. And again, like I said, you cannot deny that this guy has had great success, that he is a brilliant kid. So God bless. I was watching him on the Cheezer stream. That's where this all comes from. Like, of all the things to show. And he was saying to the kid, I used to be the youngest guy in the room, because now he's 25. And the Cheezer kid is the youngest guy in the room. And he's like, I remember when I was starting out. And when he said that, I was like, I remember when I was the youngest guy in the room. And then Fuentes was. And now it's the Cheezer kid. Like, it's a surreal way to look back on life and think about how you're the youngest guy. Now you're the old guy and there's another young guy. But still, as a lawyer, 40 is young. I'm still the youngest guy in the room in a lot of ways. But in this thing, you know, in the political sphere, or as my accountant likes to call it, the influencer sphere, you know, there's always going to be someone younger. As Outkast said, you're only funky as your last track, right? Good morning from the west, says Brian. Good morning from the east, buddy. A live stream I can listen to, says RP. Well, what's up, buddy? Audio is good. Jeremiah, salve, citizen. All right, where were we? Let's talk about, this is Missouri. Again, I hate reading CNN. I would never do it, but no one else is talking about this, which is weird. You would think CNN would just bury this, but it's just too good. Proposed Missouri bill would make teachers register as sex offenders if found supporting transgender students who socially transition. What else is there to say? A newly proposed law in Missouri could charge teachers and counselors with a felony and require them to register as sex offenders if they're found guilty of supporting transgender students who are socially transitioning. Then they've got this guy, Missouri State Representative Jamie Gregg, a Republican, who introduced this bill, which is, for your reference, HB 2885, last week. I think, when was this published? March 8th. So it was the week before last. We're reading this a little late because we aired last Thursday, and then this article came out Friday. So this is actually 2 weeks ago now. Anyway, so they talk about that guy, and then they bring in his brother. And his brother calls this hateful and malicious. LGBTQ advocates and Missourians have criticized the bill, including Gregg's brother. During a news conference on Thursday, Charles Gregg Jr., a retired and disabled veteran, gotta throw that in, a retired and disabled veteran who supports trans rights, supports LGBTQ and their, you can't call it an agenda, what do you call it? Their human rights. This retired and disabled veteran, he supports it all. What a tolerant guy. Said he was shocked by the bill his younger brother authored, and that the measure took his breath away. You can imagine the Jerry Springer nonsense that CNN gets into there. We're not going to get into it. We're going to move on to probably the most important news. You might think the TikTok thing is the most important news. I personally think the Tampa Bay Times article on what DeSantis is doing is the most important news this week. Check this out. Florida lawmakers want communism lessons in all grades. The bill is headed to DeSantis. Subtitle, under the bill, the curriculum will begin in the 2026-2027 school year and would have to be age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate for all grade levels. So presumably that means you can't talk about all the evil ways that communists murdered people, because it wouldn't be age-appropriate to tell kids about how the communists starve people. It wouldn't be appropriate to show an 8-year-old like people who starve to death in the cold, right? Show them these gruesome pictures of corpses, which is exactly the point. That sort of atrocity propaganda, we do that right now to 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids, only it's about the Holocaust. Age appropriate doesn't mean a thing when you're talking about the Holocaust. You need to talk about kids being murdered. You show little 8-year-olds Schindler's List. Like, rules are off. There are no rules. If you're talking about the Holocaust, these kids need to know. You never let the Holocaust happen again. Communism, however, let's make it age appropriate, which I don't disagree with. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy of it. And here's the real hypocrisy. DeSantis and the Republicans here in Florida want to pass this law that requires communism lessons so that kids know communism is bad. I 100% agree with this. We should have those lessons. My kids get those lessons. However, this is right after a year after DeSantis passed the law for combating anti-Semitism. He's passed multiple laws outlawing anti-Semitic speech. You cannot say bad things about the Jews in Florida. Whether you're on a college campus or you're waving swastikas on an overpass, it is essentially now, until we win these cases, illegal to say anything bad about the Jews. So how are you going to require communism lessons in school when you can't talk about the Jews? They were responsible for communism. The Bolshevik Revolution was Jewish. If you can't teach kids that, then what's the point of teaching them about communism? The Jews were involved in the communist movement in the United States. If you can't teach kids that, then why bother? Let's read the article. From Tallahassee. The State Department of Education could soon be responsible for preparing academic standards about the history of communism to be taught in grades as low as kindergarten, under a bill that received final approval Wednesday in the Florida House. The House voted 106 against 7 to pass the measure, with all of the dissenting votes coming from Democrats. How about that? The Senate last week voted 25-7 to pass the bill, meaning it is positioned to go to Governor Ron DeSantis. Presumably those 7 were also Democrats. Under the bill, the curriculum will begin in the 2026-2027 school year and would have to be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for all grade levels. The lessons also would be required to cover certain topics. For example, the curriculum would have to include information about the history of communism in the United States and domestic communist movements, including their histories and tactics. How can you possibly do that, guys, without talking about Jewish influence? If you're going to talk about the history of communism in the United States, how can you possibly divorce that from the Jews? Can't be done. And I sincerely doubt that they're going to teach kids that Martin Luther King was a communist, or that his speeches were all written by Jews, or that the NAACP, the civil rights movement, was all communist, and that it was all headed by Jews. You cannot have communist lessons in school in good faith and not point this out. You can't ban so-called anti-Semitic speech pointing out Jewish people do these things, and at the same time say communism is evil. It's like, communism is bad, but don't look behind the curtain and who's actually behind it. How are you going to teach kids about the Bolshevik Revolution? Are you going to tell them, well, Lenin did this with all his, Russian compatriots? What are you going to say about that? Like these faceless people in the Bolshevik party, like you're going to talk about Trotsky and pretend that he's just a regular Russian guy? Like, how are you going to accomplish this? The proposed curriculum also would have to include lessons on the, quote, increasing threat of communism in the United States and to our allies through the 20th century, including the events of the Cultural Revolution in the People's Republic of China and other mass killings from communist regimes, end quote. So I guess that's how you do it. You just say, don't look at the people behind the curtain. Don't look over here at what caused all this. Look over here. Look at these evil Chinese communists. We don't want that happening again. And to be fair, the Mao and those guys did that. Like that, you can't point the finger at the Goldsteins and the Rosenbergs. However, you can't just focus on China's evil. I mean, I guess you could. You could just make it just this explicitly jingoist education program, but it's not honest. Part of the debate about the bill has centered on whether it is appropriate to teach communism history to Florida's youngest students. What an amazing thing to say, because no one questions that it's appropriate to teach them about the Holocaust and trains to Auschwitz and millions of people being put in gas chambers and gas showers and ovens. No one questions that. Of course we should teach 8-year-olds about that. Let's in fact make novels about kids in pajamas and market it to those kids. Let's take them on field trips to the Holocaust Museum. No one questions that. God forbid you try to tell them about communism. Politics is just not age appropriate for children. I actually heard that in a trial earlier this week I was in, which I will not share the details of. But I had to argue, I'll just leave it at that. I had to argue about whether it's age appropriate for kids, let's just say kids, to learn about politics. Like, when is it appropriate for kids to learn about politics? And I'm thinking the whole time, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh at 6 years old. I was listening to libertarian and Republican propaganda from the time I was born. And to think now that we're going to argue, well, kids shouldn't have to learn about this until high school is just madness. One of the arguments in this trial earlier this week was that kids shouldn't learn about politics until they're 18, until they can vote. Like, at that point, it's too late. You're already retarded. And I had to respond with, you do understand that American government is a required class in public school. To which they responded that, well, that's in a public school sphere. Of course it's appropriate. So the question is, like, who is ultimately responsible for the education of children? Who is in control of this? Is it whoever we elect to government at the time, or is it parents? Or is it the voters? Is it the populace? And there seems to be this super concerning strain where the schools themselves should be determining what's appropriate for kids to learn about politics, but not the Holocaust, of course. For instance, Representative Susan Valdez, a Democrat from Tampa, said that she shares some of the concerns about teaching such lessons to kindergarten students. But she supported the bill, describing herself as a first-generation American born to Cuban immigrants who are affected by communism. There you go. So, I mean, there may be a genuine debate as to, well, can a kindergartner learn about this versus an 8-year-old versus, middle schoolers. Personally, I think kindergartners should. I mean, I read the Iliad to my kids when they were 4 to teach them about war, to teach them about the meaning of war and its causes. I don't think there is such a thing as too young to teach kids about politics and war. That's life. You can't shelter them till they're in middle school, like this artificial, oh, well, now they're old enough to learn about the struggles between peoples and what life really means. This lady, to her credit, even though she's a Democrat, supported the bill because she is Cuban and knows full well what happens when you have a communist country. Representative Alex Rizzo, Republican from Hialeah, argued in favor of teaching communism history to young students, saying, quote, this bill will allow opportunities to learn. This bill will allow for people to make up their own minds. And the people that we're speaking of are children and young adults, end quote. Public school students currently can get lessons about communism in high school social studies courses and in a 7th grade civics and government class. A U.S. government class, I accidentally pressed something that scrolled it up. A U.S. government class that is a requirement for graduation also includes 45 minutes of instruction on, quote, victims of Communism Day, end quote. Now, what this article is not telling you about what public school students currently can get in lessons about communism is that those teachers are communists, by and large. Like, yeah, you can get lessons on communism, but they are indoctrination classes. Obviously, the tenor of this bill being passed is that they are anti-communist. And that's why those 7 Democrats voted against it. Florida also previously had a course titled Americanism versus Communism, which was required for public high school students between 1961 and 1991, which is actually right before I got to high school. Representative Anna Escamani, here we go, an Orlando Democrat who voted against the bill Wednesday, raised questions about what the history of communism curriculum ultimately would include. Quote, I find the intent of this bill to be more based on a preference on teaching that a political ideology is bad versus the historical context around that, end quote. It is bad. It is bad, Anna, and you know it. This is the same Anna Eskamani, who went to Twitter the day our clients were just 2 blocks away from here at the ale house, waving flags, talking about immigration, and she posts to Twitter saying, "I've already called the police. We're looking for accountability in this situation." Anna Eskamani is a communist. That's why she voted against the bill. She wants to end free speech. She wants communism in America. That is why she voted against it. But House sponsor Chuck Brannon, Republican from McClinney, defended the bill. Quote, "Never have we tried to say that we were going to try to indoctrinate anybody, promote fear-mongering. But the bill simply is a means of acknowledging communism's role in victimizing, torturing, murdering, and displacing millions of people in the past century," end quote. An amazing news piece from Tampa Bay Times, because I feel that all of the news outlets here in Florida are communist. But this is, I can't even say neutral. This seems to be in favor of the bill. We've read a lot of articles on this program. Well, they'll give a token quote from a right-winger. They'll give a token quote from a Republican when they're obviously pushing the leftist agenda and whatever they're talking about. This is the exact opposite. They're telling us all about the curriculum. I take some issues with it, like, the telling you what public school students can take right now, but you can tell clearly the quote from Representative Eskamani, that is the token quote from the left. There's no other presentation of the left's opposition to this bill. So it's an amazing article. This was, just a couple days ago? Oh, wow. March 7th. It was a week ago. So I actually don't know if it's been passed yet. Let's look it up. Effective date, July 1st. Last action by the Senate, March 6th. So no, it doesn't look like it's being signed yet, but I'm confident it's going to be. I can't imagine DeSantis not signing this, unless he just dies at his desk today. I mean, this is getting signed. So these lessons will be required in public schools here in Florida. Guaranteed. Looks like we're actually ahead of schedule for once. Let's look at the comments here. What's your opinion on Paul Gottfried? Asks CSRL8. I don't really have an opinion on Paul Gottfried. He was, for those who don't know, I guess the founder, really, of the alt-right, which Richard Spencer kind of took that mantle and ran with it. I don't know. I have the same opinion of Leo Strauss. Okay. You had good ideas. I don't consider Leo Strauss to be in the same, league as someone like Carl Schmitt, with whom he was friends. I've never met Paul Gottfried. I have nothing negative to say about him, but I do know Spencer and love the guy. So, I have no interest in siding with one or the other. I guess I really just don't have an opinion on Paul Gottfried, except he had some good ideas. Jimmy, good morning, amigo. Also, if you have something, I can't read that, check out his chat with Mr. Cantwell. Yeah, for those late to class today, so I did Radical Agenda last week, I think on Monday, with Cantwell, talking about the Charlottesville cases, and was on the Kill Stream with Ethan Ralph 2 nights ago, talking about the Charlottesville cases. Actually, on Radical Agenda, I talked about that and the Rise Above movement case, and the case we were just talking about, Representative Eskamani, talking about she wants accountability for these people waving flags. Shut up. Those people, we have the case, where DeSantis is trying to crack down on anti-Semitic speech. We actually just won a big victory in that case last week, right after our last broadcast. We were granted depositions in that case of the police investigating it. It's a long story, but it is a big deal. After those are done, then we will be filing a motion to dismiss based on the fact that DeSantis' law is unconstitutional. We'll have a lot more to say about that when the time comes. But talked about that case in the Cantwell program last week. CSRL8 asks, when's your next book being published? Is it The Confessions? You should publish with Imperium Press at some point. Actually, I spoke with Imperium Press. They are on board with publishing The Confessions. That was, however, last summer. Literally the day after I finished writing The Confessions, I was arrested for Charlottesville. Spent a month in jail, as you know. Extradited to Virginia, as you know. Got bond for the next 6 months. Went through so many totally unrelated, believe it or not, crises that I feel like either I need a part 2 or I just need to completely rewrite the book. So I believe Imperium Press still will print it. I haven't spoken with them about it. Just last year was a year, man. But that is the next thing I'm going to publish. Yes, to answer your question, that's the plan. Ron Un says, Spud Ruckus. Ron Un says, really good writings on revisionist history regarding these things. Early to mid 20th century, etc. Very well researched. Yeah, good articles on there. Also like the Institute for Historical Review. That was a great contribution to my red pill when in law school. That and reading Carl Schmitt as part of a research project I was working on for the International Human Rights Law Institute, believe it or not. But I've talked about that elsewhere. Chimp with a Car says, I dislike Escamani for her positions and Maxwell Frost for his lack of any kind of original thought or accomplishments. Very different creatures in Orlando, local Orlando politics. Yeah, Orlando's a cesspool in a lot of ways, buddy. A lot of ways. The women, the drugs, the total lack of culture. It's just a disgusting place in a lot of ways, man. And now we've got Escamani. God help us. When will we be getting Set the World on Fire Volume 4? Asks CSRL8. Is there an easier way to say your name? Is that like an abbreviation for something? That's a lot of syllables. I don't know, man. I've been out of politics for so many years, and then they dragged me back into it when they arrested me for Charlottesville. Not running for office. Have no plans on running for office anytime soon. I'm just the lawyer, So I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. Definitely writing The Confessions. Don't know about Set the World on Fire because I still consider myself kind of exiled from politics. And he asks further, I'm still interested in your position on economics since you ditched libertarianism. I'm kind of an Ezra Pound guy when it comes to economics. You should read the poem on usura and usury. That's really, I think, my economic line. New Earth Party asks, would you accept a role in a country with a blended economic model? I don't know what you mean by that. If you could clarify, I will gladly answer that question. Spud Ruckus says, haven't heard of Institute for Historical Review. We'll have to take a look. Yeah, it's a great place, man. Bought a lot of books from there, read a lot of articles from there. That was a decade ago, more than a decade ago. I don't know if it's still around, but they were great when they were. Tampa Vikings, where can I purchase your books? Can't seem to find them online. That's because I unpublished them all. That would be why. When I got out of jail, converted to, really it was my real conversion to Catholicism. I burned everything, so it's going to be real tough to find those things. Sorry, buddy. So let's talk about the last thing on our agenda today. Also, go to Emperor Invictus on Twitter. That's where I post all this stuff throughout the week, and then we talk about them on this program. I said Patriot Act is trending. TikTok ban, that's what we're talking about. And this is why. Rand Paul is going after it. Reactionaries who want to ban TikTok claim the data can't be secure because the algorithm is in China. That's not true. The truth is the algorithm runs in the US in Oracle Cloud with their review of the code, not in China. Maybe we should examine the facts before committing violations of the First and Fifth Amendments. That's what Rand Paul says. I've lost it. I tried to go back to the post where it was shared, but the guy is pointing out, this is basically what they've done with the Patriot Act, where they convinced us all, we're going to use the Patriot Act to go after these Muslim terrorists, and then immediately use it against American citizens. So now they're doing the same thing. They're going to ban TikTok, say, this is about Chinese control, Chinese surveillance of American citizens. China is a foreign adversary. They're trying to go to war with us. And immediately after passing this, we've just given the president the ability to ban websites and apps at will. Don't even need to go to Congress for it. So, let's talk about that. The Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act, sometimes referred to as the TikTok ban, is a proposed bill in the United States Congress introduced by Representative Mike Gallagher and Raja Krishnamurti. The bill would make it illegal to facilitate the distribution or servicing of social media applications designated as being controlled by United States foreign adversaries unless their operations are divested as not to be controlled by a foreign adversary. What was the name of that one Russian social media thing? V something. I never had an account, but people were going there after they were getting banned from Facebook. The bill explicitly targets Chinese internet technology company ByteDance and its video platform TikTok, and also provides for other large social media applications to be targeted under the bill if they are deemed to pose a threat to national security. It was passed by the House of Representatives on March 13th, 2024. Let me ask you this. What is the greatest threat to America's national security right now? It's not China. It's not ISIS. It's not radical Islamic terrorists. It's not Russia. The DOJ, the FBI, they will all tell you. Local police, everybody will tell you. The greatest threat to America's national security is white nationalism. Everybody knows it. So how are they going to use this to target white nationalism? That's the question you have to ask yourselves. Because if you're going to ban something for posing a threat to national security, and the greatest threat to national security that you can name is white people, then you have to ask, how is this bill going to be used? Here's a concerning part of the bill, because I would prefer to go to the text of the bill. Rather, that was all from Wikipedia, by the way. I'd prefer to read the text of the bill than just rely on Wikipedia. The very end of the bill, Section 3, is titled Judicial Review. This is amazing. Subsection A of Section 3 reads, a petition for review challenging this act, or any action, finding, or determination under this act, may be filed only in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Amazing. What an amazing thing to say. It's like when Twitter puts in their term of service, you can only sue us in San Francisco, California. They have chosen venue. And by creating an account, you've agreed to those terms of service. And you've agreed, if I ever have a problem with Twitter, I got to sue them in San Francisco. So you live in Georgia? Too bad. You can't file a lawsuit against Twitter in Georgia. You got to file it in California. You have a problem with us banning your social media company? Too bad. You got to file it in Washington, D.C. You can't go to California if you're a communist, looking for a friendly court. You can't file it in Florida if you're a right-wing, social media company looking for a right-wing court. You got to go to the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. That's really interesting. Exclusive jurisdiction, subsection B. The United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit shall have exclusive jurisdiction over any challenge to this act or action, finding, or determination under this act. Now, if you are going to challenge the act, subsection C specifies that you cannot challenge it later than 165 days after the date of the enactment of this act. In the case of a challenge to the action, finding, or determination under this act, not later than 90 days after the date of such action, finding, or determination. So they're saying TikTok or whoever else is going to be affected by this, you got 5 months. Anybody who's affected by this in the future, you've got 90 days to file in the United States courts for the District of Columbia Circuit, or you're done. That is a super strict statute of limitations. Compare it to, I don't know, the run-of-the-mill felony, right? The state has 5 years to bring a case against you, or they can't bring it anymore. And the reason we do things like that is people forget names, they forget locations, they forget dates, they forget details of what happened. So memories start to fade. Evidence is destroyed. Evidence just disappears over a 5-year period. Witnesses die. A lot of things can happen in 5 years. So if you're being accused of some run-of-the-mill felony, after 5 years, everybody agrees, like, all right, let's just let it go. Like, there's no public interest being served in bringing someone to trial after 5 years for this low-grade felony, which is why everyone is amazed by the Charlottesville cases, because there is no statute of limitations, under the codified law for those run-of-the-mill felonies, like allegedly burning an object with the intent to intimidate. That's why everyone's so outraged by what's happening in Charlottesville right now, because everywhere else in the civilized world, if it's been several years, like everybody knows, witnesses forget things. Witnesses literally die. Evidence is destroyed or just plain lost. People get new phones. Like, the defendant is prejudiced in those situations. Take something like, I don't know, contract law, or malicious prosecution. You got 4 years to file this lawsuit for the same reason. Witnesses forget things, evidence is lost. The person you're suing is going to be prejudiced that you waited so bloody long. So after a period of 4 years, they're like, all right, no more claims. You cannot raise this. And if you do raise it, then the other side has the successful defense, the affirmative defense, that you have violated, or your lawsuit violates the statute of limitations. The case has to be dismissed, right? You can get shorter statutes of limitations, like I think defamation here in Florida is like a 2-year statute of limitations. You can restrict it even further by saying, well, here in Florida we follow the single publication rule, so you can't, people keep sharing the same publication, you can't sue them, like the statute of limitations doesn't extend each time it's shared, you only go by the date of when it's published. That's what statute of limitations means. You're restricting their ability to sue you or to prosecute you or whatever based on the fact that time has passed and the other side's going to be prejudiced because you waited too bloody long. In this case, the statute of limitations is saying, if we determine that your website is being banned, you've only got 90 days. There's another analogy here to be made with the EEOC, right? If you are fired for, being white, or for being black, or for being over the age of 40, or for being a male or a female, like if there's a discriminatory firing, you have something like 300 days from that date to file your complaint with the EEOC. That's a hard deadline. There's case law on this. Like, people have fought over this because it's such an insane standard. Normal people obviously don't know about this deadline, and it's very controversial. It's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court before because it's such a controversial law, and the corporations who violate all these discriminatory hiring and firing practices, all these discriminatory things that they do, they know about this 300-day deadline, and they do dirty things to get around everything, right? So, when you have a statute of limitations that's 90 days, that's just sheer madness. That's the government saying, you really don't have a remedy. We're going to empower the President of the United States to ban any website that he finds he doesn't like, and you're not going to be able to do a bloody thing about it. You got 90 hard days. You don't bring a suit within that time. By the way, in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, so too bad you're in Alaska. Too bad you're in, I don't know, France at the time. You're vacationing in Italy. Too bad you're in China. Wherever you are, I don't know where the Daily Stormer guys are, but wherever you are, and we've banned your website, doesn't matter where you are, you got 90 days to file in D.C. or tough cookies. It's amazing no one finds this to be even a little concerning, that we'd be granting the President of the United States the power to do something like that, and then restricting anybody's right to challenge the determination he has made. Moreover, like I said at the outset of the show, does anybody really believe that this is about TikTok? This is about China surveilling teenagers using TikTok, which, again, I think should be illegal on completely different grounds. I think TikTok, Snapchat, all of this, Facebook, everything should be illegal because it gives us all brain damage, does nothing constructive for society. The whole thing should be just completely abolished. All the social media structure, this entire phenomenon should be burned to the ground, if you ask me. But let's say, for argument's sake, you think, well, people should be allowed this. You know, my inner libertarian thinks that people should have social media, whatever you want to say. Does anybody really believe that that's why we're banning TikTok? Or is it far more reasonable to believe that perhaps some special interest group wants a precedent that no one can argue with because it's China, everybody hates China, to go after, I don't know, who's next? Russia? What we're really after, of course, in the end, is going to be anybody who criticizes Israel, our greatest ally. You want to support Palestinians beheading 40 babies at a time? I don't think so, pal. Your website's banned. And the president will be the one to decide that. Should be concerning to everybody. Liberal and conservative, Democrat and Republican. I mean, if this passes and Trump becomes president, then Trump has the right to completely ban websites in America, to completely ban apps from your phones. Do liberals really want Trump having that kind of power? Even I don't. I like Trump. I don't want him having that kind of power. That's madness. You know, King Henry VIII would kill for this kind of totalitarian control over people's minds. I think that's all we've got for the news today. Let's go look at some comments. If we don't have any comments, we'll get out of here. Company Towns, says New Earth Party. Company Towns, government assistance to produce major infrastructure. Volksstake says, my books are on Amazon. I don't know, man. I think I removed all of them. If you can still find my books on Amazon, please tell me so I can unpublish them all. So I meant to. Florida Treasure, hello, how's it going? Let's see. Deadlines are weaponized in the legal system, says Florida Treasure. It's all about winning against an adversary, no matter how righteous their case. Draconian, I'm sorry, man. I don't know. I don't think I saw your email. What is your email address, or what's the subject line? If you could type it in, whatever's non-invasive that won't dox you. type it here in the chat so I can go do a search in my email, because I didn't see it, buddy. But back to what Florida Treasurer was saying, deadlines being weaponized in the legal system. It's all about winning their case and against an adversary, no matter how righteous their case. So one of the things, you got to take several things your first year of law school, like constitutional law, criminal law. One of those things is civil procedure. Civ Pro is one of the foundational courses. Every first year law program in the country, you have to learn civil procedure. One of the deans at my Catholic law school, Jewish guy, brilliant Jewish lawyer, as I think most of the faculty is at my law school, was teaching us Civ Pro. That was my Civ Pro professor, was a brilliant Jewish lawyer who happened to also be a dean at the school. And he would tell us about, he would win cases based purely on procedural law. Well, the statute says you had 15 days. It's now the 16th day. Sorry, buddy. Your case is dismissed. It's over for you. They would do that routinely. They would be on top of all the laws. They would memorize the statutes. They would use that to win cases, have things thrown out on technicalities. That was how they won cases. It's known. That's how you do it. Email subject, St. Augustine. All right, buddy. I'm going to look for it right now. That's all the news we got for today. Anyway, I think we're at about an hour. So we will check in with you all next week. Everybody stay in school. Don't vote communist. And I guess we'll see you next week. Till then, everybody.